The $10,000 task really on a CEO's plate is all brand development. I don't have to do anything. Yes, you do, because as a CEO, your face is still required. So if you have a personal brand, what does your brand represent?
Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It is Brandy here, and I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about marketing, some personal branding, how to increase your visibility from my perspective. So there are some great episodes. I will tell you this. There are some great episodes on marketing and branding that are already established in the podcast. And for me, whenever I talk to marketing, and whenever I talk to the branding piece, it is coming from my own experience, because I will tell you, when I first started my business, I was very spoiled because I had a whole marketing director and marketing coordinators and marketing people and people on my team who helped with like social media. And when I got into my business and it was just me, and I'm like, oh goodness. And then I have to figure out, do I want to do online? Do I want to do offline? Am I going to do speaking? Am I going to do, podcast? Am I going to do community events? Am I going to network? Am I going to SEO? What's SEO? Like, what in the world is SEO? And for me, I knew what it was because we had a whole SEO company, again, spoiled, and all the stuff, like, trying to implement all of that. So as a private practice owner, you are learning. And then as your practice continues to grow, you make more money, you figure out the marketing, you get to a place of, I ain't got time to do this. So what are we going to do? So when we're thinking about the marketing piece of it, there's two things to look at, right? So especially as you start to grow the practice, you start to hire, you have additional providers, and your practice takes on its own brand identity. Your practice now becomes its own living, breathing thing outside of you being the owner, right? So you have your mission, you have your vision, and it's outdoing, it's what it's supposed to do. So there is the practices brand, and then there is your personal brand as a business owner and as a CEO. So a lot of times people get confused for what do I do? And if I'm a personal brand, then what does that look like? And if I have a practice with additional providers, but I'm the owner, what do I do there? And so some of it too, I will tell you, is trial and error. So be open, have fun with it. But when we look to bigger companies and we think about the CEO person usually always has their own brand identity. We have seen this in Jeff Bezos with Amazon. We have seen this even with Elon Musk. Whatever, but it's true. He has a very big brand. We have seen this with Steve Jobs and Apple, and we continue to see it even in the healthcare space with maybe large hospital companies or large hospital systems, and then they have their CEO, or even in the online space with folks who have been able to create really big brands for themselves. And also have practices. So, we have had other speakers who have come to even speak to our providers who have practices, but they also have very strong personal brands. The amazing thing is that you don't have to, my practice, some people choose for their practice to have its own brand, and then they don't choose to have their own personal brand. And that's okay. So I don't want you to think from this conversation that there's something right or wrong with this. It's more or less about, what are your aspirations? What do you want to do in the world? How do you want your practice to make an impact on the world and to help people? And then how do you want to help people personally, right? So a lot of times when people start to create personal brands, it's because I want to write a book. I want to be able to speak on stages. I want to be able to have my own thing. I want to maybe bring in revenue that I can actually use for myself, and it doesn't have to go towards the practice. So from the practices branding, you have providers, and it's nice when you actually have other providers or other team members who can start to step into some of the marketing activities, who maybe can go to events or network or do workshops or create their own thing within the practice and not be like I have my own practice, private practice owner, but really creating more of like like an entrepreneurship inside of the practice is what comes up for me. And so it's nice when you actually just have branding. The other thing is this was even talked about on another episode, multiple episodes actually. Your brand can be fun and it can be a representation of who you are. So one of the questions that I get is like, well, when do I know it's time for a personal brand? It's always time for a personal brand, in my opinion. So I think that when you start your practice, regardless of how you name it, then you are the person who's starting out to see patients, right? And clients. So it is you. You are the brand. You are the practice. So you can start out with a personal brand as soon as as soon as you start. And even in today's time, people are more comfortable buying from people, which is why even when you look to big companies, why they actually do have their CEOs going out creating personal brands, because when you buy an iPhone, back when Steve Jobs was alive, you felt like maybe I'm buying something from Steve Jobs, and so it's the same thing with Amazon. Like there's documentaries and stuff. So people buy from people first. And so as the practice continues to grow and now it's its own entity, then now you need to still have that same feel, that same energy, just it's now just in the practice, and your providers are putting out that same energy that you would have personally. With the personal brand, it's like as the practice continues to evolve, and when we're thinking about the $10,000 task, which you can go back to another episode and listen to, the $10,000 task really on a CEO's plate is all brand development, right? So you are out in the streets, in the internet streets, in the literal streets, in the networking streets, in the partnership streets, in the collaboration streets, in order to expand the brand of the practice. But you're doing it from a place of my practice that I've created, the practice that I own is amazing. The providers that we've hired are fantastic. The work that we do every day is wonderful. And then you can talk to a certain topic. A lot of times people have certain topics that they gravitate towards, or clinical modalities that they just love, or certain things that they've been able to accomplish, inside of their career. And so you can start to talk about those things personally, but you can still reference back the practice. And as people get to know you, then they will get to know the practice as well. So it's important for you to recognize how the two can benefit one another. You just need to, as you're talking, so if you're talking about something that's impacting the world and changing lives, then you can plug in your practice very easily with that. You can also bring additional providers with you or additional team members with when it comes to your practice, but you're still definitely building up a personal brand at the same time. What I think some people do is they create a personal brand connected to something completely separate, and so sometimes we see this where people will, like, I have a whole practice and then now I've become a coach. And so part of that coaching does not benefit the practice. So you have like where you're out and about and you're talking about just whatever you're coaching on. And sometimes that can interfere with the growth of the practice, because the practice does need for you up until a certain stage of business growth to continue to talk about it, right? Or if you are doing a certain service, or if there's a certain passion that you want to dive into, it's a beautiful thing when it can still help with the personal brand or the practice's brand, and you're still building up your personal brand. So it doesn't have to be separate. It can be one and the same, but you have to have that clarity for it too. So now if you were like, no, listen, I really love this coaching topic that I'm talking about, and I really it's my jam, and you want to build up your personal brand around that, then I challenge you, because you still want to try to drip in your practice too. So people leave money on the table when they don't do that. And then it's hard for me, because I know even on the other side, some people will come to me and my schedules aren't filled. My providers are not filled, but their providers aren't in a place where they can actually market. Their providers aren't in a place where they have that intrapreneur mindset where they want to help. Their providers are maybe a little bit shy. Their providers are coming into work just for a paycheck. And you are out talking about some completely different random topic instead of talking about, hey, we have some amazing providers who are ready to see you, or hey, there's this partnership that we can do, or there's a collaboration, or we're doing this joint venture with this new app who's going to help our patients live better lives, and you're not talking about that. That's where things get into trouble. And then also too, from a time energies perspective, building a personal brand takes time. So this is why when we're thinking about the $10,000 task, if you're putting it where your personal brand is only benefiting you and it's not benefiting the practice, then you're giving yourselves the $10,000, which I'm not knocking that by any means, but you can't sit up there and say my practice is struggling, or I'm not hitting my financial goals, or my revenue is in trouble. But everything I'm doing when I'm out there, it goes completely against what my practice needs. So there has to be some type of alignment there, especially if you are looking to have your practice be sustainable, profitable, make money, make a huge impact in the world. And I would question, if you were out there talking about something, if you want your personal brand connected to something completely separate from your practice, then I would question the vision that you have for yourself. And is your practice still in a place of serving your vision? And do you need to maybe rework your vision in order for you to either do something different with your practice or put a different leader inside of your practice? Which brings me to something of a marketing director.
Hey, private practice owner, I have great news. Private Practice CEO is officially open for enrollment. So if you've been sitting at your desk frustrated with the business side of your practice, not too sure what to do about your team dynamic, haven't looked at your numbers in a while, then this program is for you. Inside of Private Practice CEO, we're all about you scaling your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit, making sure that we are setting you up for success. So that way you can leverage your practice, you can have freedom of time in your practice, and you don't have to sit there burned out, frustrated, and overwhelmed because you're not sure what to do next. If any of this sounds great to you, then I want to make sure that you apply today because the program is phenomenal. We have amazing testimonials for practice owners who have been able to have more structure, able to make more money, being able to lead from a place of empowerment, and definitely been able to leverage their practice to go after more. So click the link today.
So the nice thing is when I did have a marketing director, they were out in the streets, kind of for me. Like I didn't have to worry about networking events if I didn't need to go because my marketing director would be at a networking event. I didn't have to worry about connection and collaborations because my marketing director could help formulate some of that stuff. Maybe I just needed to show up to the meeting. So when you have a marketing director can take all of that. But for the sake of this conversation, I know more times than not, practices are not at a level where they can actually have a marketing director, right? And so when you think about the marketing director, that's at the 5 million, 10 million, 8-figure type practice where you are actually bringing in that type of support. More or less than probably what you might be listening to this, or more or less even once you're in like 7 figures, multi-7, you might have just a really good, strong marketing coordinator or a really good social media manager. And so all of them have their places, even in the multi-6, social media manager. Sometimes when people hire these types of folks, like I have a social media manager. Okay, great. I don't have to do anything. Yes, you do. Because as a CEO, your face is still required, right? Your voice is still required. And even once you replace yourself, you're still on a board, unless if you fully sell your practice. So you have to have that voice. You have to definitely bring in your essence. And that's through video. That's through speaking. That's through podcast interviews. That's through networking. That's through speaking on stages. That's with being part of panels. That's you maybe talking about something in a blog. Like all of that is important. All of it is important. And so you might have a team who can help. And even with going back to the marketing director, I still had to show up. I still had to do stuff. I didn't have to do everything that I would need to do. I got spoiled, but at the same time, there were certain things where I had to shake hands and kiss babies because that was part of my job. Like you don't really get out of it. And so I think it's always interesting. The other thing is you have to have clarity for what the brand is. So if you have a personal brand, what does your brand represent? What does it do? What is it? What is it known for? What do you want to be known for? A true brand. And actually, I just told my son this the other day because he's in college and trying to figure out, and they're talking about branding and career development and all the things. And I was telling him that when it comes to a brand is truly what someone would say about you when you're not in the room. So when you think about your practice, what would people say about your practice if you weren't in the room? If you are talking about your personal brand, what would people say about you personally if you aren't in the room? And it's very interesting what can come up. I've been in events and have heard some stories about other entrepreneurs and other brands, and some of it is not that nice. And I never want to be that person, to be, in a place where somebody is talking bad about me or had a bad experience and I'm not even in the room to defend myself or to say my side of the story. But at the end of the day, that's the brand that those people have built, right? So when we're thinking about the personal brand, what do you want it to stand for, and what is the representation that you want to be known for? And that's truly the essence of it. And then everything else that you're doing just builds up around it. Now, I will tell you my absolute favorite, and what I see for the practices that make the most money, who have the sustainability, that have revenue, for the owners who do the best work and who are killing it. I mean, killing it. It is when they use their clinical expertise to benefit their practice, and their practice is making the money that they want to make. And they go out and they speak on a stage on a relevant clinical topic that makes an impact for multiple people, and they get paid for those types of activities. Or where they write books, and those books benefit folks from a clinical perspective or mindset perspective, but it still complements the work that they're doing or their practice is doing. And they're getting paid for that book deal, or they're getting paid from that book that they wrote, or marketing that book, or that book helps funnel more people into their orbit. And it all leads back to their practice. So now what's happening is they're getting paid from their practice, and now they're getting paid for the personal work that they're doing at a higher level. And that's money in the bank, and people don't have the patience sometimes to do it, or they'll go on social media and they'll see like a fad or a trend, or, well, this is doing this. And I think a lot of people saw this even with the pandemic, let me go do this. So and so's doing this. But really, like, the biggest asset that you're sitting on, I cannot say this enough, but the biggest asset that you're sitting on is your practice. It is a health care practice. People are out wanting to buy practices left and right. I mean, healthcare, it's a gold mine, whether if it's through AI or an app or technology, or, I work with clients who are actively going out and buying other practices in order to scale, right? And so when you're doing that, it's it's magical. Even for me, I'm looking for practices and healthcare businesses I can invest in, with profit and stuff. And so at the end of the day, it is lucrative. There is money to be made. I talked with a client this morning and she even talked about that. There's so much money to be made. You don't have to be broke in this field, but you do have to be patient with it. And you do have to make sure that things are in alignment and in coming together in order to benefit you as the owner. And I think some people miss that part. So that is my rant. Yes, that is my rant. Yes, that is my rant for today. So when we're thinking about marketing and just all the things that can happen, is, it's but more or less about visibility. How you want to get visibility, how you want to get more eyes on your business is completely up for you. It has to be consistent. And I think that's really comes down to, what do you like to do? So even from me personally, people tell me, I think I have been able to build a pretty good brand. We're still working on it, still evolving and things. But I think about when I had only 300 social media followers, and like, ooh, yay, and now it's over 12,000. And even in our complete orbit, I think we're close to 22,000 people in the complete orbit. And so when I think about just 300 people up into a community of over 22,000, and I remember I was at a business conference, and they were talking about branding and PR, and, and someone came up to me and was like, you should be up there talking about this. And I think I take for granted the fact of, it just comes down to you showing up authentically about who you are, what you believe. And more times than not, people know what I stand for. So family, my values, God is everything to me. I love healthcare. I love being able to talk about business and leadership all day. I am, passionate about the work that you can do and the impact that you can make when you help people and you come from a place of service. And that's what I get to talk to every single day. So and I've been featured for a number of different obstacles that I've been through. And I mean, just, it's fun when you actually start to create and you actually put yourself out there But I didn't start off that way. It wasn't, like it took a lot for me to record my first video, or it took a lot for me to speak on my first stage, or it took a lot for me to even start this podcast. So how you want to build your personal brand needs to be in alignment with who you are, what you enjoy, and what you can do consistently in a way that feels good for the work that you want to put out in the world. And then also know sometimes people won't like it, and that's okay. So a great brand always attracts and repels. You want to repel certain people and you want to attract certain people. So I talk about God because that's important to me, but I know some people believe in other things, and that's okay. That is okay. So for the folks who appreciate that about me, they will find that. And for the people who don't, I won't be working with them. And so it's the same thing when it comes to your personal brand. It's the same thing for the practice. You don't want to attract all the patients. Sometimes you want to be strategic about who you are attracting to the practice. And you also want to be strategic about who you're attracting to you as a person. So be bold, be audacious, definitely step into what you want for the world to know you for and what you want people to know your practice for. So I think that's all for today. All right. So I will see you guys next time, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.